Well, so hello everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us for today's webinar. I am super excited about this webinar for two reasons. One, I think it's the first time we are having a webinar with guests that are from not from a B2B SaaS company, more from the services agency side of things. So that's super interesting. And B, I have the guests who are going to try and highlight some the whole use of intent and other data sources for more lower funnel activities. So I'm super excited for that. And welcome, Mike. Welcome, Gareth. Welcome to the webinar.
Thank you.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, good. So I guess before we get into the topic for our webinar, Mike and Gareth, you want to give a quick introduction about yourself? What do you guys do at Green Leads? And then we can dive into the topic.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Mike Farrell. I'm the CEO of Green Leads. Prior to here, I was COO at by appointment only, and 20 years in the reseller channel before that. So, been doing this stuff for a long time.
Amazing. Thanks, Mike. Gareth?
Gareth Morfill. I oversee enablement and innovation here at Green Leads, and have been running point on the relationship with LeadSift. Come from a techie background, but have ended up in marketing for the last 20 odd years.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, guys. So, and for the audience, one of the things that we'll keep doing is I'll keep monitoring the chat. So if there's any Q&As, if there's any questions, please feel free to keep them coming. I'll try to keep the audience engaged. I'll ask questions. If there are any questions that's not clear, put them in the chat, and I'll try to ask the guests. So before we get started, just so that we understand what kind of what's the audience mix like, how many of you guys that have attended? If you can just type in services versus a software product, that'll be great. Just so that we understand how many of you guys are offering some kind of lead generation services in the crowd. I see services. Okay, so there are a couple services. That's great. Yeah, feel free, if you're a services business, just put services. Oh, nice. There's quite a few services companies. That's amazing. So, anyways, getting started. What is this webinar topic about? I think if you are in B2B marketing and sales, you have heard about intent data and buying intent, and how it is great for B2B marketing, B2B sales. That's a given. Now, what we hear consistently as a B2B intent data provider from our prospects and from the industry is, well, B2B intent data is great, but it's really for larger enterprises, large organizations, and it's really for more top of the funnel activities. It doesn't drive pipeline. You can't really use it for SDR activities or lower funnel sales activities. It's great to prioritize your leads, give you some indication which accounts you should go after and buy ads against them and things like that. So in today's discussion, hopefully in the next 30 minutes, we can dive deep into how Green Leads, which is predominantly an appointment setting company, how they have been using intent to drive leads and to drive pipeline, to book meetings, very lower funnel activities. So thank you both again for being part of this. To start this off, I guess this is a question for Mike. Mike, you were at by appointment only before. Now you're at Green Leads, and this appointment setting business for business to business organizations has been there for many years, much longer than this whole intent data, predictive analytics, and things like that. But in your role, how are you seeing the appointment setting industry adapting to data, to being more data driven? What are you seeing? What changes are you seeing, Mike?
I mean, sure. The appointment setting business is evolved quite a bit, right? So, I mean, I go back to where the SDR, BDR title didn't exist, right? But that's how far back I go. But there's outbound calling obviously is the traditional way, but now there's more channels, right? There's more of a cadence for emails, social touches. So it's really omni-channel is the best approach. And also think of the buyers, right? The B2B buyers. It's they're changing as baby boomers grow older and retire. The Gen X is really in the power seat now in corporate, and then millennials right behind them. So that's a change in the buyers and how they want to engage. So there's a great chart. I think it was either Forbes or New York Times that kind of laid out by generation how everyone likes to interact, right? And as you can tell, it's as we go down the generations, it's the phone to digital is definitely a change. But for us, how we have adapted, we were looking for intent. We were looking for some kind of AI to augment our services to our clients and enhance them, make them better. And we've been doing that for the past couple of years, Gareth and I. So we looked at a lot of different providers before we settled on LeadSift. But it really is. Everyone has to change as the technology's getting better, right? And the buyers are changing. So I see that, we've been in the content syndication business for lead generation too. So the intent leads is another piece of that. But the really being able to give that list to the SDR, all right, gives them some additional confidence in when they're calling. And it's not a silver bullet, but it's another really quality lead source to give to the team.
So it's not a silver bullet. I think 50% of the audience has dropped off. No, I'm joking. Gareth, a question to you is, because you are more on the weeds of it, what are the different data that you guys are using as an appointment setting company, in addition to intent, to basically help you do your job better on behalf of your customers?
So obviously back in the day, it was the basic contact record and a phone number that you worked with. The more sophisticated SDRs, BDRs jumped onto LinkedIn as being a way to augment that contact data to better personalize the conversation that you had with a prospect. Obviously, we always have a constant focus on quality and improving the quality of the data to better reach out to people. So the big focus, especially since the start of the pandemic, has been on mobile and direct dial phone numbers. And we've made a huge investment in that. Obviously, things like intent are great and help augment what we know about people already, as well as just simple basic things like email verification. LinkedIn, intent, all of these signals can lag behind how quickly an IT department will shut down somebody's email. So that's one we find useful.
Amazing. Funny you mentioned about the direct dial. There's a question from the audience which says, in this COVID world, what reduction in phone connections have you seen because everyone is working from home? And intent may not provide phone numbers, so what do you do? And I guess the answer to that is you're going more for direct dials, augmenting the intent leads with direct dials.
Yeah, and what's happened was you're right. Whoever asked that question, the contact rate has gotten worse. If you don't have direct dials or cell phones, you're in real trouble there, right? So we saw it's typically about 30 dials to a connect, and it jumped up to 60 right last summer, right?
Wow.
So that's not good. But what we saw was email became more prevalent and more engaging with prospects. So they were more responsive to email because they're not in a conference room without their laptop, right? They're doing everything remote on their laptop. So
Yeah.
so that was so we saw that. So you shift a little bit. You know, we're still a phone heavy company, but we ramped up the email cadences.
Got it.
For two reasons. Number one is because of COVID, and number two is, again, that buyer is changing, right? And how they like to interact with companies.
Got it. Cool. So moving on to the meat of the discussion is, and I'll start with you, Gareth, because again, you are close. We've been working with intent data and then actioning it. So if you had to tell the audience step by step, how are you guys incorporating intent for your customers? Starting with account selection, prioritization, selecting talk tracks, anything else in between? How are you guys using it?
Absolutely. I mean, our big interest in getting involved with intent data was always when a client came to us with an ABM list, or if they just gave us a set of demographics, firmographics that they wanted to target. You're sitting there with 400 contacts in front of you from 200 accounts. Which one are you going to call first? Now, you'd occasionally find something on LinkedIn that said someone had an active project. You'd occasionally, and that was like, that was finding, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow when you came across that. So really, we use it from an account perspective to help the SDRs prioritize who they should be targeting. So if we're given an ABM list that says, here are the 400 companies we want target, we take the intent, we map it to the signals that we're seeing at those ABM companies to then prioritize where we should be putting our dialing efforts. For some clients, their entire data universe is being defined by the intent data. So, every intent lead effectively becomes something for the SDR to prospect. So what we then look at is we look at increases in the number of signals from week to week, to see that. We look at how many people are showing signals at an account to see, where the conversation is within that individual account. And again, the SDRs use those to prioritize how they go after, how they go prospecting. So they're always really excited when we see a brand new company that started showing signals, someone new to target. So that's what we do, sort of kind of that front end prioritization. New accounts, number of signals, number of contacts, new contacts, those really the SDRs live by. The next level though, which feeds into both email as well as into how the SDR communicates to a prospect, is in terms of the signals that are being observed. So you can take an individual signal that somebody triggered on and use that language very early when you engage them, either through email or in the talk track. So
let me ask you this question, Gareth, sorry to interrupt, is when you say you are using that language, so you figure out which trigger this person is triggering on, which intent keyword or topic, do you, when reaching out, do you mention it to them saying, hey, I know you have been researching about this, or how do you frame it?
Let me, I want to jump in here because it just, so everyone knows, we use LeadSift for our own prospecting activities. And I got the LeadSift report this morning, and I saw a couple that were really interesting. And what I did, one of the key words is SQL, right? Sales Qualified Leads. So for us, and so I used that to reach out to a few people in the subject line. SQLs, whatever else I put next to
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
And then in my first couple sentences, I'm making it highly personalized to them and also to their title, right? So, you know, if they're a field marketer versus a channel marketer versus a demand gen marketer, right? You can have a little different first opening couple sentences. So that's what a very detailed use case of how you could take the information that comes from the intent lead and start to, you know, reach out to people.
Yeah. So for our own use, you know, we could talk to someone about content syndication, which is a very different level of lead than appointment setting.
Yeah.
Right. So just knowing when you get on the phone with someone, they triggered on appointment setting, means you start talking about appointment setting. You don't say, we can do this, or we can do this, or we can do this, which means a much, much more personalized conversation with the prospect. And as I say, we use that on behalf of our prospects, on behalf of our clients, both with email as well as talk tracks when doing telephone-based outreach. The other thing that we look at is the verticals that are showing signals. Because again, for our clients, you know, we had a case earlier in the year where the client came to us, that we've been running intent for them for 3-4 months, saying our targets for 2021 are going to be this industry, and this industry. And we were very quickly able to go and look at the intent data to find that one industry that they were wanting us to put a whole bunch of effort into was not showing any signals whatsoever. You know? So we looked at it, we talked about it, so we decided that the focus should be on 2 different verticals, the 2 verticals that were showing the most interest.
That right there is highly strategic, because, you know, sales and marketing people are under a lot of pressure to deliver pipeline and deliver sales. And just think, if they put a lot of money and resources down the wrong path for 6 months, and you lose a lot of money, a lot of opportunity cost lost. So, I mean, that is a huge, from a strategic standpoint, how to target where your target market should be.
Absolutely. There's a question from someone in the chat. Simon is asking, has buyer intent increased your conversion rate, increase your SQL conversion rate for your clients? If so, what range of percentage increase?
Good question. We don't have visibility into our clients' CRM system to see how things are progressing. So obviously we don't have that level of information. But what we do is we get a score back from the client rep after the meeting, after the appointment happens. So they rate the meeting, you know, on our scale. And what we've seen is about a 25% increase in the quality of response from the rep and what they felt, how the meeting went, and is it going into an early stage of a pipeline or some other kind of sales activity. So that is definitely a better outcome for the client, right? On our side, there's a psychological boost to the SDR that is also, you know, and it impacts, you know, just the psychological boost alone can impact positively the KPIs, right? So, because we all know this SDR outbound is it's a major amount of it is just keeping everyone's head in the game.
No, that's so what you're saying is, from a conversion perspective, after a meeting is booked, if it's booked from an intent lead, the SDRs are basically rating it as 25% more likely to convert into an SQL or moving down the funnel.
No. So I'm saying that that's the rating after we set the meeting, and the rep goes on the meeting, they're rating it higher. So
Got
it's at the rep level after the meeting takes place. So there's but on the SDR side, there is a psychological boost when they get a list. I mean, they love getting intent lists to call the SDRs, and because we're literally getting, they get some responses from when they're doing these outbound calls. Hey, are you reading my mind? We were just talking about this topic.
That happens once, twice a week that someone will get that comment back. It's funny you should mention that topic because we've just started having that conversation around that. What we also know is that obviously when you book an appointment, appointments can fall out. Appointments that are booked off of intent leads tend to be stickier because the prospect that you're calling is showing intent, is interested in the topic, is more likely to turn up at the meeting. And because they are that engaged, the meeting that our client's sales rep has are more productive. So all along the street, it ends up being very positive. We've also seen from our outbound prospecting efforts that we get about double the conversions on intent to a cold call list. So,
and what do you mean by conversion, Gareth?
That we're able to set an appointment.
Oh, wow.
So if we have 100 cold call names and 100 intent names, and we call them for 10 days, we're likely to get twice as much out of the 100 intent than we are out of the 100 cold.
Awesome. No, that's great. Those are some great metrics. I mean,
yeah.
All we are trying to do here, one of the things is to educate the industry and figure out, is intent going to work for lower funnel activities like SQL generation, meetings book, and stuff like that. There's a question in the Q&A from Alex who's asking about, let's talk about intent data itself. What are intent signals and how does LeadSift find them and how accurate is it? So that would be, like, I can take that question and talk about how we go about doing it. I'll try to be super brief. So Alex, LeadSift picks up intent signals by crawling the public web. We look at over 70 million sources of data every day and look for signals that correlate to buying activity. Signals could be if you see someone engaging with a competitive vendor, researching about an industry topic, attending trade shows, events, using certain technologies or not using certain technologies, hiring for certain roles, have some open projects, mention something in the SEC filing, a whole bunch of disparate pieces of data that we observe every day at a company and at a contact level, and then merge them into a model that then spits out a score at the account level saying, hey, this company is a score of 80 because there were 3 signals about a vendor, a competitive vendor they were researching about. We're also hiring for a couple of roles, and 2 of them were from the director of IT, Jenny Smith out of Virginia. So you have a lot of context around that. I'm more than happy to answer this question in details. I'll follow up with you, Alex, later. I don't want it to be about how LeadSift does it, but hopefully that answered your question.
I would just add to that, Tukan, that we looked at a lot of different vendors to partner with, and there's a lot of intent providers out there that will just say, hey, somebody at Dell is searching on your keyword. All right, well, for us, we're selling to a marketing person. Well, there's about 1,000 marketing people at Dell. Who do I call first? With the key with LeadSift is you're getting their name, their title, their email address, their LinkedIn profile, and most of the time you get a phone number. Some phone numbers are missing. We have to enrich that data, but that's powerful that you're getting all the contact information and you're finding out exactly what the trigger is they're interested in. So that's the key.
Amazing. There is another question. Yeah, go ahead.
To put too rosy a face on it, Tukan, yes, there are false positives.
I need to meet you now, Gareth.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
But the reality is, you know, you have to work with the model. You have to refine your triggers. You have to, you know, understand why you're seeing the signals that you're seeing.
Yep.
Because for most of our clients, we don't action off of every signal.
Yes.
You know, we take the contact, you know, we never know when they might come useful, but they don't necessarily get put into a campaign for calling because the signal isn't strong enough.
I see. And how do you decide, Gareth, who to put it in a sequence and who not to?
By slicing and dicing the intent signals 101 different ways and having the conversations with the SDRs. They're where the rubber hits the road. They have the conversations. They start to know which personas are the right personas. They look at the intent signals. They get a feeling for, this is a good intent signal. This one isn't a good intent signal. So then we can just filter out all the ones that they don't feel are productive.
That's great. There's a question here. Again, this is amazing. I love how engaged the audience is. That means, I mean, we are having some interesting discussions, I hope. So one question is, what percentage of total monthly buyer intent names are you converting to a meeting? Range is 5 to 8%. I couldn't hear your 100 cold versus buyer intent number. Thanks. I can answer the second half of the question. The answer there was, Simon, they're seeing a double in the meetings booked versus a cold lead of list of people versus buyer intent. But can you say a percentage, Gareth? Is there a ballpark number that you guys are seeing to answer the first part of the question?
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, what percentage of total monthly buyer intent names are you converting into a meeting? If you had to give a percentage, do you know that off the top of your head?
It really depends on the client.
Really depends.
I mean, we deal business with all technology companies, but it's, you know, for every different technology you can think of, with every different target audience you can think of. So it really does depend. I would say in general terms, going back to the example of 100, if you prospect 100 companies for your service, really, where is your company's product in the technology adoption curve is a big indicator of this. But if in general, you know, a cold call list, a BDR should be able to get 10 to 15 meetings of 100 companies over a period of about 3 months. All right.
Okay.
2 to 3 months. If you use 100 companies with intent signals, you're going to potentially, you know, double that.
Okay.
Over again, it's a very general ballpark, because every campaign is going to be wildly different.
Yeah.
And a lot of it does. And lead gen people, because we do top of the funnel lead gen too. Lead gen people want to just a conversion number for everything, which is great, but where your product is in the adoption curve is a big indicator of conversions, right?
Yep.
How interested are people going to be in your?
Yep.
If you're very early nascent, nobody even knows what your category is, very small, right? But if you're in that major adoption curve, then you have to know who's thinking about your product and service.
Because another way to think about it, the pond that we're fishing in, right? We know that actively looking for the solution that you're representing is maybe 1% of the accounts that are out there.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay. What we're targeting for appointment setting is we're trying to find the 50% of accounts that are either looking or susceptible to looking. So, you know, when we get an intent list, we've effectively knocked out the half that aren't susceptible to looking. Our list is entirely based upon people that are actively looking into the topic matter. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's just ends up being stickier, easier to convert to a meeting. The meetings are better quality. Everybody ends up happy.
Amazing. Another question from the audience, this is more of a tactical one, is from a best practices standpoint, how product specific should intent signals be in order to be actionable to SDRs? Meaning, what are the kind of triggers are more useful so that an SDR can use? Is it super, like there's a follow-up to that? There are a lot of buzzwords, especially in marketing. Should those be included in this type of intent signaling? Meaning, like, what is a trigger that you should look for to have showing intent that an SDR can use?
So Gareth works with the platform all the time, and we're setting up these campaigns. There's your target audience in terms of customers. There's a personas you're going after. And then the thing is all your keywords that would pertain to your product, your service, and what the potential buyer or customer is out there. What problem are you solving for your prospective client? And then all those keywords, think of a Google search, right?
Mm-hmm.
If someone's searching for your product, for us, they would be searching for SQL, appointment setting, content syndicated leads, intent leads. All these things are, things that we can help, or they could be their business problem could be pipeline generation. So you think of your clients' problems and what your category nomenclature is, and those are all your keywords, and that's going to be really what gets captured, and those are the most actionable.
Okay. And then do the analysis on what are you seeing, which signals are you seeing.
Mm-hmm.
we for example, if your messaging is about remote work, right?
Okay.
Is different than if your messaging is about work from home. Include both and look for both signals, right? And then you can see how you should be communicating to the market, right? As to what one is going to resonate more. So, we slice and dice. We're as interested in the signals that we're not seeing. Why aren't we hitting on certain keywords as we are on the keywords that we're hitting? And again, we prioritize off of that.
Okay. No, this is great. So moving on to the final section, and we are already at the 30-minute mark. One question, I guess, I'll ask you, Mike, first, is for companies that are B2B services companies that are providing some kind of lead generation services or B2B marketing services to end customers, if they're thinking of adding intent as a part in their arsenal for their services that they're offering, what are the key benefits that they should expect? Like, why should they consider? And what are certain gotchas or things that they should be careful of?
Well, that's a good question. We talked about a few of them already, Tukan. Garrett touched on some of the benefits. You're gonna the better outcomes for your SDRs, the better outcomes for your reps after the meeting occurs. That meeting's gonna be a higher likelihood to advance into a pipeline.
Amazing.
Your SDR, the SDR's job is great, is hard, right? And think about if you guys out there are marketers, the worst thing you could hear from the SDR is the list you gave me sucks, right? Right? The leads suck, right? That's crushing to a marketer to hear that from the SDRs. Well, guess what? You still have to, as Gareth said, there's false positives in there. So you have to, if you get an intent list of 500 leads in a month, you have to, take out some that are false positives. But then what you're left with is the reps are not going to say suck, right? They're gonna have especially once they start hearing about get those reactions from prospects. Oh, are you reading my mind? We had this conversation. my analogy is it's a sonar device. Any of you fishermen out there, it's a sonar device. You go out fishing, you got a fish finder on your boat, right? So you instead of fishing the whole ocean, right? You want to go to a spot where you see fish in your sonar detector. So that's what LeadSift is. Instead of going after, hundreds or thousands of contacts, you can go after ones that have a higher likelihood that they're going to accept a meeting and then advance into pipeline.
Amazing.
But you have to fill. But the one thing is, I can't stress it enough. You don't want to give them the false positives, because then you're going to hear the list sucks, and you don't want to have them lose faith in it. Right? So you have to have a data person, someone like Gareth. You have to have a data person kind of really get in there and go through the guts of it to make sure it's clean it up.
Got it. So basically, if you are thinking of adding intent, it obviously adds a ton of value for your SDR team prospecting, and also the end customer, the leads that are appointments being set, because they move down their funnel faster. But at the same time, you need to be mindful of not just blindly taking all the leads and just them blasting out emails, because that would not work. You need to look at certain data patterns to see which ones are sort of the false positives. Right?
Absolutely. The intent file that you guys deliver is great. That's just the start for Green Leads. We do a lot of work. We spin the data multiple different ways so that we can ensure that what we give the SDRs is going to maximize their time. And they don't, like Mike says, they don't complain. And after doing this for 12, 13 years, I know what an SDR complaining sounds like. I wish I never hear it again. And I wish when I'd been on the phone, that I'd had that ability to go, okay, here are the 20 accounts that I should be trying to get into today.
Yep. No, that's awesome. Cool. So those are all the questions, discussion points I had. I know there was a lot of discussion from the audience, so thank you for that. We can stick around for 5 more minutes and take any other questions that anyone else has that we didn't cover, and ask Gareth and Mike. Anything else? Did we cover most of the questions? Hopefully you guys got some tactical value, some real numbers around what kind of benefits intent data can provide to a lower funnel activity. How can you use it from account prioritization, talk track selection, figuring out what is that trigger, use that in the subject line without sounding creepy. So there's a ton of, I guess, valuable tactical advice that was shared. Again, I don't think there are any more questions at this point. So again, thank you. Oh, there's a question, and this was a question from Simon. Can you compare LeadSift versus other buyer intent vendors? Simon, I can answer that question. I'll send over. We have a comparative matrix that I can send through to you. But the biggest difference is 2 things: how we collect intent, how we define intent. It's not just someone going through a publisher site, reading an article, maybe, and an IP address. We look at a more exhaustive way of defining buying intent. The second thing is, for majority of the signals, we provide contact level data. As Mike mentioned, if I tell you Dell, you're not left wondering who within Dell you should be talking to. You know which people within Dell you should be talking to, because these are the people that are showing intent. So those are the big differences. I can send over a more detailed analysis. But again, thank you. Oh, yeah. All right. Another question. I love it. Everyone's asking questions. Do you think if one implements AI ML on the intent data, or if human intelligence is involved, that will make intent data more effective? I think, Gareth, you want to take that?
Yeah, the intent data on its own needs to be activated.
Yes.
I mean, that is really key. And the SDR is making a ton of micro decisions.
Yes.
When they get that contact.
Yeah.
They're looking at email. Does the email look right? Is the title right? Could the title mean something else?
Yeah.
Does the company look accurate? Those are decisions that can't be made. The network analyst at a healthcare company is very different than the network analyst in the IT department. AI is never going to work that out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's never going to happen. The SDR is going to do that by knowing this is a healthcare company, by knowing that they have those kinds of titles. So lots of micro decisions. There really needs to be that human rubber hitting the road to turn that signal into a lead.
You're really optimize AI and LeadSift's intent. It optimizes the SDR's job.
Yeah.
You're in with a better outcome for the rep. That would be how I would synthesize it.
Yeah, and to answer that question from Sanjay, I think AI ML can be used to make intent data more actionable, but in the short term, if you do use human intelligence, it's going to make it more effective, 100%. And that's what Gareth and these guys are doing. SDRs or someone in the data team first is formatting the data, making some decisions, micro decisions, as they mentioned, to make it more actionable. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, all the attendees that attended, asked these questions. This is by far the most engaging webinar we have had. So thank you to the hosts, for the guests, I should say, not the host, really, the guests, for being so kind and informative. And again, thank you all. I'll stop the recording and